Hello, everyone, and welcome to our next partner webinar. Today, we're going to have a very interesting session presented by an expert in the big data field, one of the first trainers in the enterprise big data framework. In today's session, we're going to be talking about how to design a big data organization. As most of you will know, embedding big data in an enterprise is as much about change management as it is about big data. The design of the big data organization therefore needs to be user-led and have participations across all levels of the enterprise. It's basically an exercise of digital transformation. Today, we're going to hear from an expert in this field who knows how to transform organizations in order to get them ready for big data. It's my great pleasure today to introduce Sean Lowe, a senior consultant at Quint. Sean has over 20 years of experience in service management, ranging from service delivery consultant to service delivery manager in various local and international companies. He has a deep knowledge and experience in project management, IT strategy, governance, and big data. Sean has a track record in consulting, project and process management, and improvement, and has helped various multinationals to lead the way in order to prepare their big data organizations. I'm very thrilled to welcome you today, Sean, to present this next webinar with us. It's an absolute pleasure to have you, and I would like to transfer to you to start the webinar today.
Hi, good morning, good afternoon, or good evening, wherever you are. My name is Sean Lowe. I'm with an organization called Quint. Again, very happy to be here with you today, and really honored to actually to do this with you. Thanks, Jan Willem, for that great introduction. I'm going to start off today by telling a bit about myself. Already, Jan Willem has actually done a great job, right, in doing that, and I hope you all can see my screen. Yeah. So again, my name is Sean, and I'm from a company called Quint. I'm going to tell you a bit about Quint in a short minute, and then we will go into today's topic. Yeah. So we're going to start off with a quick introduction, and then we're going to look at the need for big data today, right? And why is it important for us to really think about big data and how organizations need to organize ourselves in big data. We're going to look at the challenges that organizations are facing in implementing or organizing themselves for big data. We're going to look at 5 main challenges, and then looking at the guidance to actually help resolve these challenges, right? By looking at the strategy and the center of excellence and so on and so forth. And we will end today's session with a Q&A, where you are able to ask any questions pertaining to what we're talking about today or what we've talked about today. And hopefully we can provide you with some guidance and some solutions of how to apply this in your organizations. One thing to note that starting up big data in organizations doesn't have to be a huge change, 180 degrees change immediately. You don't necessarily have to do that. We need to actually start it off and then build upon it. And we'll look at that as we go along. Okay. So again, my name is Sean. I work for an organization called Quint. We are based out in the Netherlands. And I've been with Quint for more than 4 years now, taking the role as a senior consultant. And my focus primarily is on helping organizations to transform and to improve the way they adopt some of these frameworks or some of these concepts within the organization. In fact, I have actually conducted many consultation projects with both large organizations like Malaysia Airlines, Maxis, a telco company over in Malaysia, a chip maker known as Infineon, and do many courses and training with companies like Intel, and for example, for Intel, for multinationals, both in Malaysia and Singapore, in Philippines as well, and across the other countries around the world. Yeah. So again, I bring along a lot of experience in helping to set these things up. Yeah. A bit about the company I work for, Quint. Quint, we are a consultation and training organization that has helped organizations to implement digital transformation, implementing new frameworks such as the Big Data framework, IT service management framework such as ITIL version 4, the latest, help in project management, help in actually helping organizations set up their whole IT setup and also organizations to set up their business setup. So we are available and we do work around the world, and we are working with partners around the world to enable this to be successful as well. So what do we do in Quint? We actually help build and share best practices and next practices, things that are being introduced to help organizations transform. We do market surveys and benchmarking in terms of new ideas, new concepts, new way of doing things. We actually do trend watching, looking at the future of technology, looking at the future of organizations, helping organizations to also adopt these new concepts as well. We do a lot of training for certification, and also we do a lot of workshops and training to help organizations to be more efficient and more effective. Yeah. On top of that, outside of just working with organizations or corporate organizations, we also work with organizations that focuses on sustainability, on non-profit work, and on community work as well. Because a lot of these concepts that we talk about today, like the big data or setting up a big data organizations, can be applied to organizations of different sizes and different industries. It's not primarily to a specific organization, but it is going to be across multiple organizations. Yep. Okay, so what are our capabilities or change? So part of the work we do at Quint and part of the work that I do with Quint is to actually define digital strategy and transformation, implement new concepts and way of working like Lean IT, Agile and DevOps, look at data management and governance. One of the very important part for any organization is leadership. And we help organizations to applying and helping them apply transformational leadership, which is what is really needed in organizations implementing big data today. Yeah, we also look at IT governance, risk and compliance, service integration and automation and management. And of course, we focus a lot on these things through training and coaching, right? Not just certification training, but also workshops and so on. Okay, so to find out more about Quint, at the end of the slides, there are a couple of emails. One email is directly to me. One is to the director, my director, over here in Asia. And we also have a link to our website where you can find out more information. But feel free to drop us a line to engage with us so that we can help you further in your organizational journey. Yeah. And I hope everyone can hear me clearly. If you can't, let me know, and I can repeat myself or slow down a bit. Sometimes I forget because I do this quite often, and I sometimes speak too fast. So do let me know if I speak too fast, or if I'm boring you. I'll throw in a joke or two. Okay, right. So why are we here today? Okay, we are here today because we want to understand how to design a big data organization. A big data organization is not primarily the use of just technology and algorithms to do big data work. Those are important, right? I would never discount that, because the base of big data is to have the technology and the ability to apply statistical models onto huge amount of data so that we can discover new patterns or new solutions to the work we do, right? But I think one thing we always miss is the organizational readiness for big data. Big data is not just hiring someone to actually run statistical models to get answers. As an organization, we must have the right support or support, right, the work of big data, right? So the organizational aspect must never be forgotten. And why are organizations very interested in big data today? And why are they having problems to do that? Right? We will talk about the common mistakes that organization makes, right, in running a big data organization. But before that, why is big data important today? And I've thrown in some numbers here, right? And I always like to make sure that this information is reflects what is actually happening today. So if you look at the first point, companies in the top tier, third of their industry in the use of data-driven decision making were on average 5% more productive and 6% more profitable. Big data is important today, and if you do it correctly, this can happen, right? And of course, this is not just some numbers we plucked out. This was actually collected in 2012 and was recorded in the Harvard Business Review magazine for October 2012. Right. Point number 2 says that big data is important today because by 2025, okay, companies and individuals will produce an estimated 463 exabytes of data each day. Actually, when these numbers were collected by the World Economic Forum in 2019, I think they were a bit cautious, right? But if I look at 2022, where we are now, coming to the end of 2022, I think by 2025, we would have exceeded 465 exabytes of data each day. I think we are going to collect a lot more. If you look at for the last 2 or 3 years or so, during the pandemic, right, which we are hoping to that disappears quickly, right? The amount of data we have collected has jumped up because you're collecting a lot more on medical data during the pandemic. People are starting to work more at home, more virtual environments. The growth of data has become much more exponential. And if you look at point number 3, big data can unlock significant value. And if this is done correctly, this can actually bring a lot more productivity, a lot more value to organizations. Because big data, if this is delivered correctly or is carried out correctly, can open up information to be more transparent, where you can find more more patterns, more ideas to be able to deliver better service, newer service to meet the demands of the consumer today. And again, all these things are the good things. These are what we call good news. But if we are not able to actually organize ourselves to do this, then we will not be able to capture this true value. Yeah. So, like I said, big data is not just hiring people and then giving them a bunch of data and then get them to resolve it and find patterns from it. As organizations, we need to also organize this correctly so that it can be supported. The work can be done correctly. So, of course, organizations do find it a challenge to do this. And what are the 5 main challenges that we commonly see in organizations when it comes to applying or implementing big data? So the first one, it's a very standard one, right? And a lot of times we know this. Organizations cannot do well with big data if there is a lack of big data strategy. What do you mean by that? See, a lot of organizations, and I've met many of these organizations who gets very excited when we talk about big data, and they want to do it, right? And they think big data is very simple to do, and they don't build a strategy on what they want to do and how they want to do it. In fact, some organizations don't even know why they want to do big data for, right? I've spoken to some organizations because they say that, oh, everyone else is doing big data, we want to do it. So the first challenge is always that lack of big data strategy, not having a strategy in place to actually drive big data. And we'll talk about some guidance to help form this. If you look at the numbers, and this was collected by New Vantage Partners in 2020, only 26.8% of organizations reported having forged a data-driven culture, right? One of the challenges of big data is not the skills you have, it's the mindset and the people, right? Having the mindset to actually drive this. Number two, 37.8% of organizations reported that they were data driven. Only 37.8%. That means for organizations, they they think that they are data driven when they are not, right? If you do interview, just very surface, you ask organizations, are you very data driven? Everyone will say yes. But if you start looking at the details, you find that the number of actual data driven in organizations are only 37.8%. And the last point says only 41.5% of firms reported that were now competing on data analytics, right? They can't even actually compete because they can't even sort out how big data is being used within the organization internally. So that's the first challenge that organizations have implementing big data, lack of big data strategy. Number two, again, you will most probably have heard this, and this is, again, some people say very common, the lack of leadership, right? Most organizations want to do big data, but senior leaders and managers and your CEOs and your C-levels don't even know how to actually use the data. They don't even know what the data will solve, what problems they want to solve that big data can help them, right? That they don't even know what are the actionable insights. They might want to do big data, but they do big data without any foundational understanding of it. For example, if you were to go to an organization and you ask them, so I know you want to do big data, but what problems are you trying to solve? Well, I don't know. Hopefully, big data can tell me. But again, that is a problem itself, right? Because again, we need as an organization, as leaders, to be able to understand why we want to use this for, and again, how to organize and drive the use of big data. Number three, the most common challenge in big data organizations nowadays is lack of structured guidance for big data. Everybody wants to do big data, but nobody knows how to do it. There is no guidance, right? And in some organizations, they just do a hodgepodge of people coming in to run a big data project without proper structure. And having a structure is very important because you need to have a common framework, a common process, a common set of guidance, a common set of maybe even a functional group of people to help steer big data in the right direction, right? So lack of structured guidance for big data is another challenge. Challenge number four, lack of defined data roles and professions. It's very common, right? When we do big data, right? We normally talk about having data scientists or data analysts. What would be the other roles that is needed? And again, when we talk about data analysts and data scientists, what do they actually do? We need to be able to actually look at the roles, right? And again, when we talk about roles, these are not job titles. Job titles can be given, right? Like a senior data analyst, that's a job title. Whereas, but what are the actual roles? What do these people actually do, and how do they contribute to what call that helping you succeed with big data? And we'll look at some of these common roles later on, and look at even considering a big data project manager type of role that focuses on primarily on big data projects. And the final challenge, common challenge in big data organizations is the required cultural change and the right mindset. Well, if you look at the statement at the bottom, it is simply not enough to describe how to inject data in decision-making process. It is far harder to make this normal, even automatic for employees. A shift in mindset that presents a daunting challenge, right? Big data is not just getting a bunch of people doing big data projects. Everyone in the organization must have the right culture and the mindset to want to do big data. Yeah. One of the major challenges in organizations is that you have a plan to do something, but if the mindset is still very conservative, it's not aligned to big data or the achievements of big data, you cannot sustain it. And when you talk about change of culture and mindset, that you are also looking at changing people's hearts and minds as well, right? People must want to buy into this, must want to change the way they do things to support this. So these are the 5 main challenges in big data organizations. And if you have any other challenges that you recognize in your organizations, please feel free to bring them up during the question and answers, and we can actually further discuss this or look into this. Okay, so these 5 challenges, how do we manage them, right? What would be the guidance for that? Okay, let's look at the first challenge. And what was the first challenge? Defining a big data strategy. As an organization, we need to start off by having a big data strategy. What is a big data strategy? A big data strategy defines and lays out a comprehensive vision or what your end goal will be across the organization or the enterprise, and sets a foundation for the organization to employ data-related and data-dependent capabilities. So as an organization, you need to start off by having a big data strategy for the entire enterprise. For example, how will the work we do in big data link back to what we want to achieve as an organization? What problems do we need to solve in big data, right? How do we actually set goals, business goals, and then allow big data to help achieve it, right? How do we actually set ourselves apart to be data-driven enterprise, okay? We need to have a strategy, right? Think of it like a soccer or a football game, right? The players don't just go down to the field to play soccer or football and hope to win the match. There is always a strategy behind. Remember, the football manager or the coach will always decide how many people will be playing the forward, how many people will be in the midfield, how many people will play the defense. And again, they have a strategy in place. And they form their strategy based on their competition, right? Based on what they want to achieve. Some football teams or soccer teams, they will form the strategy not to win the match because they just, and this is maybe the final game of the season, they will form a strategy just to either get a draw, right? And don't want to concede any goals. And they will form a strategy for that. So in big data, as an organization, we need to define a big data strategy. So how do we do that? Okay, so we do that by defining the business objective. So we need to align our big data strategy to corporate business objective and looking at what business problems we want to solve. We then actually go to step 2 by executing current state assessment. Looking at the corporate business objectives, looking at our what we want to achieve, we need to execute and understand what is our current abilities or capabilities, right? We can't go in there blindly to say that, oh, we have everything, we can do this. And then we need to move on to step 3. Based on our current assessment on what we can do, our capabilities, we need to identify and prioritize the use case for big data. Because we might come up with a bunch of use cases, right, to solve business objectives, but which one are the most important ones? And which ones are the ones that we can do? Which are the strategies we can actually carry out? Then we need to actually, based on the use cases and our capabilities, we can then go to step 4 to formulate a big data roadmap. So again, we have a bunch of things we want to do, a bunch of strategy we want to achieve. When do we want to achieve this? We might want to start off small and then grow it. Again, how long will it take? 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 years, and then we need to also allow us to actually update and adapt along the way. And of course, don't forget in our strategy, don't forget that any big data strategy you want to implement has to embed through change management, the cultural change, excuse me, the mindset change. Because again, if people do not buy into this, people might buy in through their mind. That means they find this logical. But if they don't feel it in their heart, they don't have the passion to want to do this, then this cannot be done. So guidance one to solve the problem is have a big data strategy. And again, if you want to find more details on how to do this, please refer to the big data framework, right? The framework, the enterprise big data framework, for more detailed guidance, or you can reach out to Jan Willem or us to actually look at this. Yeah. And this is important, right? You need to define a big data strategy. Without a goal, without alignment to the organizational objectives, whatever big data projects or work you want to do is not going to be in alignment. Okay. So guidance number one, define a big data strategy. Number two, what was the challenge number two? Lack of leadership. Okay. We need to build a strong big data leadership. And this is driven by senior management. It's not senior management just announcing that they want to do big data in the organization. It's that the senior management must actively and continuously support the big data work. So instead of just getting managers and senior management team, we need to get leadership here. And leadership are people who supports, right? So leaders are the ones responsible for making strategic decisions, helping create the big data strategy, and then they are the gatekeepers on how this data will be used, right? They will set the data strategy, they will set the vision, set the objectives, and ensure that the organization can carry out the execution of the strategy. Like I said, if you look at point 3, leaders are not managers, but change leaders because they see change as a chance and opportunity, and they challenge the status quo, and they support the work that needs to be done through big data, right? Leaders are important. Yeah, because again, if you don't have strong leadership to help support big data, decisions cannot be made, right? So part of big data leadership is to always have a big data champion, right? Within the leadership environment, there must be a person who vigorously support or defend the cause for big data, right? Sometimes you can have 2 in the C-suite. Because again, if you have a champion, it signifies the importance of big data. It signifies the importance of doing big data correctly, ethically, right? That's why I talk about data ethics. And you can read this on the latest McKinsey digital newsletter that was published on September 23rd that talks about data ethics. So appointing a champion, a person that is rigorously supporting big data and supporting big data ethical use and strategies is important, right? The danger is always this, we have a lot of leaders that says that they want to support big data, but we don't have a specific person who's going to drive this. So we need to have a champion. And the other point I always want to make is that one of the leadership team that will help drive big data in organizations is a big data project manager. And why is this important? Why can't we just simply use any senior project manager to help run big data projects? And why do we need a specialized data project manager? Because a project manager doesn't just have big requirements, but the big data project manager must be able to take care of an intensive management of big data interfaces, must understand big data to be able to actually lead the project, and make sure that it's successful. So a data project manager doesn't have to be expert in all things big data, but do understand and contribute to big data projects. Because big data projects are very different from your traditional waterfall or projects. Big data project is more iterative, right? So having a project manager that understands big data will help us then deliver on that project. So some guidance on building up a strong big data leadership. If you do miss any of this, I believe that the slides will be sent to you, and there's a recording for this. You can refer back to it again. So we've talked about having a big data strategy to meet the first challenge, and then having a strong leadership team. The third guidance we want to look at is structure. In every big data organization, we must establish a big data center of excellence. What is a big data center of excellence? Basically, it's where the organization identifies, or a functional section of the organization that identifies new technologies, learn about new skills, and develop appropriate processes to do this. Some people say, um, is there an example, what we call that, a day-to-day example of a big data center of excellence? In some of your organizations, you might have the project management office, or the PMO. So the PMO is kind of like a center of excellence for all things projects, right? To provide guidance on projects. This applies to big data center, big data as well. So in June 8, 2015, the World Economic Forum published an article on 3 steps to big data leadership, where it states, set up a big data competency center, or a center of excellence that includes stakeholders from IT, business, and analytics functions. This will actually provide the entire guidance for all your big data projects. So very importantly, the big data center of excellence provides the best practices and the methodologies for doing big data successfully as the organizations evolve. Because again, the center of excellence can provide foundational big data knowledge for any organization starting up with big data. And when the organization grows, right, and does more big data work, the center of excellence can provide further guidance, because they are the ones that is going to actually grow big data adoption, right? So the BDCOE is an important section that looks at providing structure and guidance for big data teams, right? According to the Enterprise Big Data Framework, so the Big Data Center of Excellence consists of 6 areas. The big data team, which are the people, the most important asset. That means this big data center of excellence, or BDCOE, can provide you with the resources needed for the big data projects. The second thing is the big data lab. Big data center of excellence can build up lab environments for big data work to be carried out. That means they have the latest technology to test out big data, for a working environment to do big data. You have a place where you can actually do proof of concepts. Because again, in your organization, not everyone is going to be tuned to big data and what value it delivers. So the Big Data Center of Excellence can help you run some of these big data use cases to display value and where the data is going to provide you the most value. The Big Data Center of Excellence also provides the working approach. In this case, the Center of Excellence will adopt concepts like agile way of working, because big data is iterative, right? It's not a waterfall of design, build, test. It is cycles of work that is being done, because in big data, the more cycles you run, the more information you can get from the data. And of course, one challenging portion of big data is always, how do we charge for the work that needs to be done in big data? So again, the Big Data Center of Excellence, or the BDCOE, can provide or create charging models. For example, the cost of big data, how much will we charge per project, define charging structures and ROIs for big data. So your Big Data Center of Excellence is basically a functional unit that provides guidance of all things big data. And this actually helps senior leaders to run big data, because senior leaders can actually support this, but sometimes they don't know how this needs to be supported. And having a Big Data Center of Excellence where you have teams and labs to be able to help you manage your big data work structurally is going to be of utmost importance. Okay, so guidance 3, set a structure for big data to be carried out correctly. So if you look at guidance 3, establish a big data center of excellence, this kind of also helps answers the next challenge, the roles and responsibilities and the people for big data. If you look at the first area of the center of excellence, is the big data team. So in terms of big data skills and roles, so big data is a knowledge domain. And this knowledge comes from the people. using tools and processes and technology to get valuable information from data, right? While big data jobs are very attractive, a lot of organizations are looking for big data people. We need to be able to make sure that we get the right people, right? According to TWDI research in 2011, it shows that inadequate staffing and skills are the leading barriers to big data analytics. Yes, there are a lot of people out there with the right skills, but who are these roles that need to, or what are these roles that need to be properly filled for big data to work out? I've said in the presentation some of the most common important roles for big data. You can actually use this as kind of a guidance when you're looking to hire and train your people for big data. Okay, so what are the skills? So some roles of importance for big data organizations, you need data analytics experts. Basically, these are the people who apply the statistical models, use the application on the data so that actionable data results patterns can be generated. So these are data analytics experts, right? So they are the ones that will actually capture and look at the patterns and find patterns from the data and then present it to the business where the business can then understand what the data is telling them. Second role, we always need our data scientists, and data scientists are the people who will build these algorithms and statistical models. The analytics don't, because the analytics will look at the data and decide what data is important based on the problems they want to solve, the use cases, and then the scientists will then build the statistical models where the analytics experts can apply the models to this data to actually generate the patterns and the information. Every big data organization requires infrastructure because all these things have to be run on computer systems and infrastructure that allows for the processing of large amount of data. Normally, we're looking at distributed environments, distributed processing, distributed storages. So the third role that's important in big data is always system architects and big data engineers. So the architect or the engineers are the roles to design, build, and manage the underlying infrastructure where big data applications and big data processing can actually be carried out, and making sure that these systems run on a day-to-day basis without any glitches. Because if the systems, the foundations, hardware systems or the infrastructure, if it's not running correctly, the analysts and the scientists cannot use it. Right? Makes sense. Two more roles that are important: the data software expert or the big data developers. These are the people who will develop the software for these algorithms and models to run on. Not only just develop, will decide how this software can work together, right? In big data, and if we look at the big data framework, we apply the reference architecture model from the National Institute of Standards and Technology, where we talk about orchestrating, right, the software, the applications, and the infrastructure to work together to support big data. So in this case, the software people or the software expert or the developers need to be able to understand which application will support the algorithms and the delivery and how of the value from the data and how it will run on infrastructure. And of course, we have the big data operation expert. These are the people who will ensure that everything links together, right? So these are big data specialists, again, into bringing the data that is required by the analyst, right? And then ingesting it, cleaning up the data, correcting the data, removing data there's no value, and then so that the analyst can then apply the algorithms built by the scientists to find patterns. So 5 most common roles that you are looking for in terms of big data, right? If you want to look at the details of this, again, you can always reach out to the Big Data Framework organization or us at Quint to help you with these things. Well, which takes us to our final portion of today's talks, and very just nice, right? We are coming very close to the 45-minute mark, and the final guidance is the challenge of cultural change. What we have talked about, the last four guidance, makes sense, but it cannot be successful unless big data mindset and culture is embedded into the organization, right? It requires change to happen. Not change in technology, but change in people's behavior and attitude and acceptance of it. If you look at this, adopting technology change, it's something that we all can do, right? We can buy new handphones, new computers, we are okay with that. But I think the transitioning from how we think previously to what we need to do, it's a difficult one. So the transition aspect of change is a human psychological process of letting go and adopting new. And in big data, we need to let go of the things we used to do. For example, making decisions without the support of data, doing big data projects, applying conservative project management methodology, all these things we have to abandon and adopt the new. And that can be very difficult, right? So shift in mindset is a daunting challenge. Yeah. So, and this shift in mindset and adoption of new cultures is going to involve everyone. And I normally love to use this diagram. This diagram consists of ideas from three different thinkers in terms of cultural change and adopting to new mindsets. We have right in the middle the two thinkers there. One is called Bridges, a person by the name of Bridges, and Senge, Peter Senge. And at the bottom is a Harvard professor by the name of John Kotter. And all these things link together to help us with adopting cultural change. And we, again, in big data, is not changing overnight. That's why when you're doing big data, you need to have the strategy first. Based on the strategy, help people with slowly moving along the strategy. And the strategy might require you to abandon what you used to do and adopt the new. So if you look at the very top, the leadership role is the one that actually plans for it, right? They will initiate the change. They will start engaging the people in the journey of change. And once the change is adopted, they will anchor it as the new way of working. Again, anything that is not anchored, people will go back to the old way of doing things. And that is not going to be very valuable for big data. For example, people say, oh, big data requires so much work, right? For decision making, I will just go back to the way of decision making through assumption. That doesn't work. So the senior management or leaders need to anchor it as the new way of the new mindset for big data. If you look at the middle portion, that's where people will go through the change. So people need to have endings. That means they need to give up what they used to do and abandon it and let go and then start journeying. So from endings, people need to move on to the neutral zone where the change happens. And this is where the leaders will engage with them as they adopt the new way of working. And then this will lead people to the new beginnings where they adopt the new mindset, right? So it is a journey, right? So adopting big data in an organization is not, hey, tomorrow let's do a big data project. We're going to be successful. Nope. Nope, that's not going to happen. People have to go through the journey. And of course, remember when we talked about the big data roadmap, the big data roadmap, when we talk about strategy, is not a technology roadmap or the way of working roadmap, but it's also a cultural change roadmap. If you look at the bottom roadmap, so according to John Kotter in his book, Leading Change, these are the 8 activities you can help with the cultural roadmap. Again, I wish I've got more time to talk about this, and I'm always very excited talking about cultural change and the right mindset. But again, if you want to have more information about this, feel free to reach out to the Big Data Framework, to Jan Willem, or to us at Quint. But remember this, big data is not just purely technology. It is also going to be people, cultural changes. That is what makes the difference of a successful big data organization and a unsuccessful one. Okay, so again, data-driven culture starts at the very top, the senior leaders. Data-driven culture requires a holistic approach and collaboration with different people and different stakeholders, senior and your operational stakeholders. Again, one of the ways to get people to learn about big data, to accept it, is to provide them with ongoing big data training and programming. And of course, when you apply big data as well, don't just focus on just delivering value to your customers, but again, use big data internally to see how you can make things, again, much more effective within the organization. Okay, so hopefully that gives you an idea about the challenges and the strategies of a big data organization. I'm just going to pass it to Jan Willem to actually open up a session of Q&A. Yeah.
Thank you so much, Sean, for very wise words, very good inspiration. If there's one thing I really liked what you said was big data is not a technology roadmap, it's a cultural roadmap. And I think that's definitely one of the key lessons to take away from this. It's also something that I think a lot of organizations are really struggling with, because buying the technology, that's frequently the easy part, but then getting the whole organization behind that and changing that, that's really where people struggle the most. But we still have time for one or two questions. I already saw a couple of questions coming in on the Q&A. For those of you who are listening, if you still have questions for Sean, please use the Q&A button on the left-hand side, where we can still moderate some questions in the next 5 minutes. I received the first question, if you're open for that, Sean, which is from Ferdinand Johan. And he said, in the concept set that you talked about in terms of big strategy, how do you develop a good use case?
Okay, to develop a good use case always starts with what problems you want to solve in your organization, right? Because there are many use cases where big data becomes important, but at the core of it, in your organization, what are you using big data to solve? What is the most important problems you're trying to solve? Is it internal problem or an external customer problem? If you figure that out, you can then break down that problem into what are the ways to solve it, right? And again, once you break it down, you need to prioritize what is the most important portion of the problem you need to solve it first. And then every use case, there must be some sort of value that you need to deliver. You need to also understand the risk of implementation, because some use cases to implement big data might actually create a lot of risk which you never thought about. And of course, the cost of implementation, right? When we look at value, we always want to find out what is the effort we need to put in for big data to solve the problem. And again, what's the if it's going to make sense or not, right? But always align back to what problems you are trying to solve. Again, there are templates we can use, and within the big data framework as well, there is a template that I find very useful. You can refer to that because it asks you very detailed questions about what's the problem, is it what are the financial costs for it, what are the risks of implementation, what is the complexity of it, and then you can then use the matrix, prioritization matrix, to then see if this is something you want to do or not. Okay.
Good. I think that's a very, very detailed answer. I'm quite sure that answers the question. I see the thumbs going up, so that's probably a yes. I think we still have time for one more. I'm going to kind of make this the final question. And this is a question that is coming in from Mohammed Nazim. And his question is, I hear a lot around the concept of data literacy. Where does that fit into big data?
Okay, that's a very important question. Okay, so the concept of data literacy is to be able to understand what the data is telling you and to understand what the data is all about, right? And it comes back to the big data is that if we don't really understand the data we're using, or we're sourcing the data wrongly and it doesn't help us solve the problem, we are going to be in trouble. Data, and we won't find any value from that data. For example, okay, let's just say that your organization in the banking industry, and you don't understand the data that you're using to help solve your banking problems. You just go out there and just take any bunch of data, and it doesn't apply to you, and that's a problem. Yeah, and then it doesn't solve your problem. It doesn't solve or give you the solution. Data literacy also looks at the ethical use of data and understanding where these data can be used. Because certain data cannot be used, cannot be stored in certain areas. You remember one of the things we talked about earlier on is data ethics, right? Again, data is governed by how we use it. There are policies for it. For example, data that is collected in the Europe has to comply with the GDPR. So all these things you need to understand it, because everyone will tell you, well, data is freely available, you can get it anywhere you want. But if you don't understand what's the value of the data and how it applies to the problem you solve, and again, what are the policies governing the data, then you have a problem. That's why if you want to find out more about that, one of the sections I would definitely recommend you to read is the Big Data Framework, the section under Big Data Processes, where we talk about the 3 process activities. One is the analytics process or the 8 steps to analyze the data. We talk about data governance process, setting up policies for data and deciding what data to bring in, and data management process, setting up guidance to make sure that policies and governance is in place. Hopefully that answers your questions as well. Yeah.
Thanks, Sean. I think that's an excellent question. Or an excellent answer, I should say, towards that question. With that, we're slowly but surely, unfortunately, getting at the end of our time. Sean, it's always such a pleasure to hear you talk about these kind of topics. I think that today you really touched upon a topic that is going to be very, very important for every company that is thinking about how to implement a big data organization. A lot of focus is always around the technology or the procedural aspects. But I think what you very rightly and very thoroughly expressed is the people side, and making sure that you're changing your organization in that process as well, by taking people along with you on that journey. So thank you so much for sharing your expert knowledge today. I learned a lot listening to you, so I found it a very, very informative session. So I'm going to be reaching out to you again to host another session somewhere in the future.
Yeah. Happy to be here. Thanks for having me. Yep.
Absolutely. Thanks so much, Sean.